Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the In Demand Hairstylist Podcast. I am so glad that you are here today. So, I want to talk to today's episode is for salon owners with teams. Okay, so whether you are a stylist that someday wants to own a salon and wants to grow a team of their own, maybe you're a new salon owner and you're just getting into hiring your first couple of employees, or maybe you've been a salon owner for many years, you've grown a team. I want to share with you guys today the three of the possible biggest mistakes that you could be making as a salon owner. How do I know what these three biggest mistakes are? I'll tell you how I know. I know because I've done every single one of these. So as I'm walking you guys through these top three mistakes, in my opinion, just know that I have made all of these mistakes and I have still come out on top, right? Doesn't make you a bad salon owner. It doesn't mean that your salon is going to fail. It does not mean that you shouldn't be a salon owner. It just gives you insight into areas of your own leadership as a salon owner where you can shift, pivot, and grow to become the best possible leader and to create the best place and the best environment for hairstylists to grow in. So, without further ado, let's dive right into the three top mistakes that you may be making as a salon owner. Number one, avoiding tough conversations. I don't know about you, but as a salon owner, I had a really difficult time having tough conversations with team members. This could be from anything from when a client maybe called in and didn't like their hair. Then I had to have a conversation with the team member. I hated doing that. Maybe a team member came in wearing something that was not in our dress code, not up to our standards, and I had to have a conversation with them. Didn't like that. Maybe there was some sort of behavior or something that I saw that didn't align with the culture, and I knew that it wasn't right, but I hated having that conversation. I don't know how many of you can relate to this. It was challenging for me to sit down and have these challenging conversations sometimes, but what I can tell you is that when you avoid having tough conversation, it becomes a cancer to your culture. So nothing is worse than an owner, a salon owner who's supposed to be the leader of the salon, who is avoiding having tough conversations. Because whether you think so or not, everybody in the salon already feels the energy. They either already know what's going on, right? Because sometimes they know what's going on before you even know what's going on. So either they already know what's going on, and if they don't, I can guarantee you that they already have felt the energy shift of whatever issue is going on. I know that you guys know what I'm talking about when I talk about energy shift, right? It's the energy where maybe somebody comes in wearing something, one of the team members walks in wearing something that totally doesn't fit the standards and expectations of the salon. And everybody knows it, but nobody says anything. At the end of the day, it's nobody's responsibility to say something to that team member except you as the owner, the leader, or possibly the manager or assistant manager if you have those positions in place. But if you don't, and you're the person who's in charge, which most of the time in small salons, the salon owner is in the salon daily, you get to be having these conversations with team members. So by avoiding them, it's showing your team that you're not leading them, that they necessarily can't even trust you because they don't think that you're going to be able to lead the salon. They lose respect for you, quite honestly. When you're not addressing things that need to be addressed, they lose respect for you. And when your team starts to lose respect for you, it becomes really challenging to get them on board with anything else that you want to drive forward or anything else that you expect of them. Because if you let this slide for this person, then why should they step up? Right? So it becomes this whole spiral of other issues that happen and that branch off from the root thing, which is you avoiding tough conversations. Now, it is challenging sometimes to address certain things, but what has been incredibly helpful for me are a couple of things. One, having some sort of process to have these conversations. One of the things that I have always learned is about it's so super simple and easy and silly, which is like the positive sandwich, right? So you first start with something positive, you share the feedback, whatever the negative behavior or action that you saw, and then you end it with a positive, right? So I don't know whether that's the most perfect way of doing it or not, but one of the best processes that I have learned is when I went through a training with Heather Yurko, who's now Heather Manuel, and the process of having a quick chat, which is just a chat with your team member about it's not scheduled. It's just something that you pull them aside and say, hey, can I borrow a minute of your time? This is what I noticed. This is what the expectation is. Can I get your agreement that next time you're going to show up looking better than you did today, or looking like within our standards and expectations within the salon? Quick, easy chat, right? If it happens again, then you have something called what they call a refocus chat. And that is when you actually schedule it on the calendar and say, hey, can I borrow a half hour, 45 minutes of your time? There's something that I want to talk to you about. And you actually put it on the calendar, on the schedule, and you sit down and walk through what the behavior is that you already talked about, right? So there are different processes that you can put into place within your salon if you are the type of salon owner who has a hard time having those tough conversations. And another thing that was super helpful for me is shifting even the verbiage that I'm saying, right? Like challenging conversations, hard conversations, and really shifting that perspective that these conversations that you're having are not hard, they're not challenging, they might feel uncomfortable, right? But they're empowering. You're doing them from the right place. You're doing it to hold them high. You're doing it to pull them up into their greatness, what their potential is. It'd be one thing if you were having conversations all the time, beating people down. But these conversations that you should be having are with the intention of pulling them up, rising them up to their potential. So knowing that the why behind it is something empowering, where as opposed to disempowering, can be a way of shifting your perspective on that. Regardless of what it is, the only way to get better at doing it is to do it. So we always had a kind of like a pact within my salon that it's within 24 hours. When you observe whatever is happening, when the upset happens, within 24 hours, you have that conversation. Because if you let it go longer, typically it gets swept under the rug until the next time when it comes up, because it will inevitably come up again. So that could be one of the most damaging things that you're doing as a salon, is actually avoiding those tough conversations or those uncomfortable conversations. That's what I'll call them. Number 2 is not following through on your promises. How many of you have promised something to your team, said that you were going to do something, said that you were going to bring on a certain color line, said that you were going to implement a new service, said that you were going to host some event, and then got too busy and you didn't? If that's you, no shame in your game. I have been there. I have been that owner. And what I can tell you is it's one of the most damaging things that you are doing as a salon owner. Not following through on what you say you are going to do causes distrust between you and your team. And again, just like I was saying with the avoiding tough conversations, when your team doesn't have trust in you, it's going to be challenging to get them to step up to the plate when you need something from them, right? When you're trying to hit a revenue goal or a sales goal or get them on board for something that you want to bring into the salon. If you're not stepping up to the plate, you cannot expect your team to step up to the plate. If you're not following through, you cannot expect your team to follow through. If you are not being consistent, you cannot expect your team to be consistent. This is why leadership is so incredibly important when you are a salon owner or small business owner or just an entrepreneur in general. If you have people who are working with you, for you, under you, whatever it might be, the standards and expectations for yourself have to be high, because your team will only perform to the level that you are performing. They're never going to be better than you. And if they are, they're going somewhere else where there's a leader who is somebody that they love to follow. So this is the place where leadership is so incredibly important for salon owners, is that you must continually be pushing yourself out of your own comfort zone. You must continually be stepping into your next level of leadership and potential so that you're always bringing your team up with you. Your team can only grow as much as you're willing to grow. So if you're an absent owner, if you're not really into growing, if you're kind of like wanting your team to do all of the work, it doesn't work. So I'm not saying that you have to physically be the one behind the chair. In fact, I actually coach to the owner eventually stepping out from behind the chair so they can focus on growing the business and having a place for these people to grow, right? But you must always be expanding yourself, whether that's behind the scenes in the business or if you're working in the salon and behind the chair. You should always be expanding yourself, because if you don't, you cannot expect your team to do more than what you are currently doing. It just doesn't work like that. So following through on your promises is going to create strength and trust within your team. When you say something and they know that you're going to do it, they know that it is going to get done, it forms trust. And when your team can trust you, they follow you. They will perform whenever you put things into place. They will jump on board when you have maybe education that you want to bring into the salon. So if you do not have a motivated team, it always points back to you. You're the reason you don't have a motivated team. I can tell you that right now. It's not the people. It's who you're being as a leader. And that might trigger some of you. If you just got triggered, it's probably something you should look into. If you're so busy defending all of the work that you are doing, everything that you do in the business, and your team does nothing, there is a disconnect somewhere. I'm not saying you're not busy. I'm not saying you don't have a lot on your plate. What I'm saying is there's a disconnect somewhere between you and your team. If they're not motivated, and they're good people, like they're good people, but they're not motivated. You can't get them motivated. You can't get them to sign up for classes or show up to meetings or get them on board with new things you have coming on. There's usually a disconnect between you and your team, and it's worth figuring out. A lot of the times it's something simple, like being your word, following through on the things that you say that you're going to do. So if you're making a bunch of broken promises, you're not going to have a lot of buy-in from your team. So something to explore. And again, this is not shaming you. I 100% have been this owner. In fact, I'll tell you an example. Like, here's an example. In my salon, we put a goal in place that if we hit a certain revenue goal, we were going to get a TV for the salon, and it was going to kind of go in this area. And we hit the goal, which is amazing. We celebrated it. And I was like, yeah, we're going to get the TV. And I never got the TV. And then the team would eventually, like, they would say little remarks like, oh, when we get the TV. And that, you guys, is a perfect example of, yeah, right. When we get the TV, is like, it was a broken promise. When you break your promises and are not true to your word, you lose the trust and respect of your team. So when that happens, that's okay. When that happens, you acknowledge your mistake. You acknowledge to your team the breakdown. You acknowledge that you're not perfect. You acknowledge it and take the action that you need to take in order to correct it. So in that scenario, my corrected action would have been like, you guys, I'm really sorry. I 100% am responsible for not following through with what I said. my intention is to have the TV by this date, right? So that would be, and I apologize. I'm so sorry. I hope that this doesn't break our trust. From moving forward, I'm going to be more committed to my word. Boom. Okay. So that's next level of leadership. Is that how you're being in the salon as an owner? Because here's the thing, when you're a hairstylist, you're a hairstylist. But when you take on the role of owner and having a team and leading people, your role and the actions that you have to do within your role change, they evolve. And this is one of them, is being true to your word. Okay, the last thing that you could be doing, one of the mistakes that could be happening in your salon that you're doing right now, is not making time for your team one-on-one. I think that this is so incredibly important. So whether you have 2 employees or 22 employees, it's important to spend one-on-one time with your team. And one of the biggest kickbacks I get from salon owners is, I don't have time. Not having time is an excuse. I'm not saying you're not busy. So people hear, oh, you don't know what my schedule's like. I absolutely do know what your schedule's like. I was 100% a full-time hairstylist working behind the chair and running a business with 13 employees. I know what it's like to be so busy. I'm a mom, I'm a wife. I know exactly what it's like. I'm a homeowner. I know how busy and stressful it can be being a salon owner. But as long as you're willing to make time an excuse, you're not going to be able to move forward. If you have the excuse of time, you're never going to be able to step into the possibilities for yourself. Because if you don't have time for your team, then do you have time for your family? If you don't have time to invest in the people who are working for you, do you have time to take a vacation? It's like, if time is the excuse of time will show up everywhere in your life. So just think about that for a minute. I don't have time to work out. I don't have time for my family. I don't have time to eat right. I don't have time for this. I don't have time for that. Like, if you use time as an excuse, it shows up everywhere in your life. I can promise you that. So don't use that excuse. I mean, the next level of leadership for you as a salon owner is stop using the excuse that you don't have time. How do we make time? How do we create time? How do we adjust and pivot our time? How do we allocate our time? How do we do all of these things so that we can create what it is that we need to create in order to move the needle forward? When we have a happy team, we have productive and successful salons. Happy teams equal successful salons. So making time for one-on-ones with your team, whether that's a quick 10-minute sit down, it could be 5 minutes, it could be 10 minutes, 15 minutes. In my salon, we did anywhere between 10 to 30 minutes, depending on the stylist. If it was a newer stylist that needed additional support, I would make sure that I set a half an hour aside to talk about what they're working on, what their goals are. If it is an existing, a veteran stylist that's with you that just needs to pop in maybe once a month and, get a little bit of encouragement, accountability, maybe it's a 10-minute sit down with them once a month. Maybe that's all they need. But regardless, spending that time with your team, setting it aside, lets them know that you value them as a team member. When your team feels valued, they will show up to the plate for you. If they don't feel valued, they're going to show up unmotivated. Wouldn't you? If you never felt appreciated for the things that you did for your team, if they never said thank you, would you want to continue to do things? Like, it's really challenging to keep showing up to the plate for your team when they don't feel supported, when they don't feel acknowledged, when they don't feel like that they can trust you, or that the space that they're working in is a positive work environment. So sitting down and scheduling one-on-one time with your team members once a week, bi-weekly, once a month, and just asking them, like, if there's anything they want to share. Maybe you have a a process for your one-on-ones. That's what I teach my one-on-one clients, is how to sit down and have one-on-one meetings with your team, and what does that look like. But regardless of how it looks like for you, just making sure that you schedule that time on a consistent basis to connect with your team. This gives them the opportunity to talk to you, to share with you, what are they working on? What's not working for them? Maybe there's things that are going on in the salon that you don't necessarily know about that are bothering them. And it gives them an opportunity in private to share with you. So these are the 3 top mistakes that I see salon owners making that could be damaging the growth of your salon, right? And just to recap, 1 is avoiding challenging conversations. Number 2, not following through on your promises. And 3, not making time to connect one-on-one with your team members. Now, if you're doing any of these, no big deal. Now is the opportunity to shift and change. Acknowledge your breakdown, commit to how you want to become better, and then start doing it. Like, it's not the end of the world. Don't beat yourself up over this. I've done every single one of these things and more. I've made tons of mistakes. I was still a very, very successful salon owner. I still was able to sell my business, and it's still thriving and growing today with a new owner. So you're going to make mistakes as a salon owner. The key is, how are you going to shift and adjust when you recognize that maybe these are the behaviors that you've had in the past? So I hope that this episode was helpful for any salon owner or any stylist that hopes to become a salon owner. And if this episode was helpful for you, I would absolutely love for you to share it with a friend, tag me on social. And if you have a moment and you feel like this episode was helpful, I would love for you to give me a 5-star review. Leave a written review. That would be amazing. That helps this podcast get out to more people in the world. And I would love for you to share. So thank you so much for being here today, and I'll see you guys on the next episode.